Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. We want to begin with chapter 1. I think it's chapter 1. Actually, no, we're going to skip chapter 1 and go on to chapter 2, Dobby's Warning. We're actually going to pick up with page 14, where Harry is upstairs in his bedroom and Dobby is speaking with him. And Dobby tells Harry, let's see, at the bottom of page 14, a house elf must be set free, sir, and the family will never set Dobby free. Dobby will serve the family until he dies. And Harry thinks, and I thought I had it bad, staying here for another 4 weeks. This makes the Dursleys sound almost human. Can't anyone help you? Can't I? And Dobby goes all crazy again. And then Dobby says, Dobby has heard of your greatness, sir, but of your goodness Dobby never knew. And Harry and Dobby talk some more. And then Dobby says, Harry Potter is humble and modest. Okay. And what we see here is, if you remember how the book opened, Harry was kind of having a pity party because it's birthday and he hasn't heard anything from any of his friends. Hasn't gotten any birthday cards or letters or anything like that. And so he's feeling pretty down about things, and he's feeling, wondering whether his friends really are friends. And then he meets Dobby, and he finds out what a horrible life Dobby has, and Harry immediately asks, isn't there something I can do? Is there some way I can help you? In other words, Harry turns from focusing on his own problems and own concerns to focusing on the problems and concerns of someone else. This is something we're going to see in each of the remaining books. And I think it's part and parcel of what J.K. Rowling is doing in the entire series in terms of us seeing Harry grow up and mature. She's also having him learn the value of empathy or compassion for others. Not only in the sense of doing good for others, but also what that does for the individual. The individual who becomes concerned for others stops focusing on their own problems, and in doing so, their own problems become less important. So Harry and Dobby keep on talking. And on page 16, Dobby says, Harry Potter is valiant and bold. He's braved so many dangers already. He must not go back to Hogwarts. And Harry's like, what? Not go back to Hogwarts? Are you crazy? Harry Potter must stay where he is safe. He is too great, too good to lose. Okay? Now, Dobby is making a statement there that Harry doesn't fully understand. But in saying Harry is too great, too good to lose, Dobby is suggesting some other things there. And Dobby goes on and says, Harry Potter must not put himself in peril. He is too important. Why is he too important? For what purpose is he too important? Harry's only a 12-year-old kid. He doesn't think he's important. I mean, something happened 11 years ago that he had no control over. Okay? So Harry mentions Dumbledore. Dobby says some things about Dumbledore. And when Harry says he will not go back, he will not stay away from Hogwarts, Dobby drops the pudding, and then Harry gets the owl letter from Mafalda Hopkirk, etc., etc. Okay? So his next couple of weeks don't go very well. And then he gets rescued by Ron and Fred and George in the flying Ford Anglia, and they take him to the Burrow. Okay? So he gets to the Burrow, and he's welcomed there as a member of the family. Fred and George and Ron get in trouble for Mrs. Weasley. And then we get the chapter at Flourish and Blots. And I want to pick up with page 50. Harry takes the flu powder and arrives in Borgin and Burke's. And he oversees Mr. Malfoy and Draco, and Mr. Malfoy is selling some poison. And Harry finds that kind of surprising. And when he comes out, he runs into Hagrid. But while he's in there, and he overhears Borgin talking with the Malfoys, we hear on page 52, Mr. Borgin says, "Wizard blood is counting for less everywhere." And Malfoy says, "Not with me." Okay? Wizard blood is counting for less everywhere. Now that's important because later on, in the same chapter, we see Harry as they make their way into Flourish and Blotts. Harry's going to have an interchange or a conversation with Draco Malfoy. But before that happens, on page 58, they find Percy, or they see Percy reading a book titled Prefects Who Gained Power. And Ron reads from the back cover, "A study of Hogwarts prefects and their later careers." And then Ron says to Harry, "Of course he's very ambitious, Percy. He's got it all planned out. He wants to be Minister of Magic." In other words, what does Harry want? Percy want? Percy wants power. Notice the title of the book again. Prefects Who Gained Power. Now, remember for a moment how Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone ended. Harry had that conversation with Professor Quirrell, and Quirrell said that he learned from his master, Lord Voldemort, that there is no such thing as good and evil. There is only power in those too weak to seek it. Prefects who gained power. Maybe there's something linking there. So, pages 60 and 61, Harry is seen by Gilderoy Lockhart, and Lockhart pulls Harry in to get a picture. And on page 62, Mr. Malfoy insults Mr. Weasley, talking about how poor they are. And we suddenly find out that Mr. Weasley jumps them and they get into a brawl. And on page 63, after Hagrid breaks it up, we hear Mr. Malfoy say to Ginny, "Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you." And then Hagrid says, "You should have ignored him, Arthur. Rotten to the core, the whole family. Everyone knows that. No Malfoy's worth listening to. Bad blood, that's what it is. Come on now, let's get out of here." Hagrid says to Arthur Weasley, to another adult, that the Malfoys aren't worth paying any attention to. That they are, to use Hagrid's term, bad blood. Earlier we heard Mr. Borgin talk about wizard blood. In just a few pages, we're going to hear the term mudblood. Now, in this book especially, J.K. Rowling seems to be continually bringing up this issue of blood, this issue of lineage, and what it means not only for an individual but for a family and for all of the wizarding people. Hagrid again says, rotten to the core, bad blood, that's what it is. The whole family. Is that true? Is anybody really rotten to the core? Bad blood? Meaning there's nothing they can do to change? That they are from birth determined by forces external to them to be rotten? That's what that's what Hagrid's words mean. Now we're going to see this language come back to bite Hagrid in Book 4, in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. But we'll keep this in mind for now. They go on, and they go back to the Burrow. So they make their way on September 1st to King's Cross, and Harry and Ron, for some reason, can't get through the gate. So Ron comes up with the bright idea of flying the invisible car back. Notice there are some kind of logical issues. Why don't the Weasleys ought to know as soon as they leave from platform 9 3/4, that is Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, what Fred and Ron have done. You'd think there'd be subway to stop them. So Harry and Ron arrive at Hogwarts, and they fly into the Whomping Willow, and get beat up and stuff. They make their way up to the castle, and on bottom of page 77, they're looking in the window to the Great Hall, and they're wondering where Snape is. Harry says, "Hang on, there's an empty chair at the staff table. Where's Snape?" Ron says, "Maybe he's ill." Harry, "Maybe he's left." Ron, "Maybe he might have been sacked." And then we hear a voice, "Maybe he's waiting to hear why you two didn't arrive on the school train." So Snape has found them, and Snape's hoping that they'll get expelled and such. But they don't. And Dumbledore is very stern with them. And on page 82, after Dumbledore and Snape leave, and we just have McGonagall left with Harry and Ron, she tells them, "Speaking of Gryffindor." But Harry interrupts. Harry cuts in. "Professor, when we took the car, term hadn't started, so Gryffindor shouldn't really have points taken from it, should it?" And notice we're told that Harry thinks she almost smiled. Okay? What does this show us? Harry's ability, once again, to think fast on his feet. He immediately says, term hasn't started, Gryffindor shouldn't lose points, okay, but they're going to get some kind of punishment, but that's okay. He's trying to make sure that his house doesn't get punished. So Harry's punishment is to serve detention with Lockhart, and Ron gets to serve detention with Filch. So the next chapter, Gilderoy Lockhart. And we see Harry have a run-in with Lockhart before herbology. Lockhart thinks he's given Harry the bug for publicity and such. And then we see on page 94, Harry's talking with Justin Finch Fletchley, and Justin tells him that his name was down for Eton, which is, the premier, or almost the premier, what we would call private school or boarding school in England. In England, it's where future princes go and such, or future kings go and such. So they make their way to their first Defense Against the Dark Arts class with Gilderoy Lockhart. And on page 99, he holds up one of his books. And the book, Travel with Trolls, has his portrait on the front of it. And he points at the book and says, "Me. Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League." Notice that. He's an honorary member. In other words, he hasn't earned his membership. And 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. But I don't talk about that. I didn't get rid of the banding banshee by smiling at her. Well, he says he doesn't talk about it, but he talked about it. He brought it up. Okay? And so he gives them promptly a quiz. First day of class, it's a natural thing to do. But what is the quiz about? Is the quiz about defense against the dark arts spells, techniques, theories, things like that? No. The quiz is all about, what does Gilderoy Lockhart like? What does Gilderoy Lockhart, what makes him happy? Those kinds of things. So we see examples of some of his questions on page 100, and we find out, of course, that Hermione got them all right. And so Lockhart's going to do a practical lesson first day of class. And he tells them that the Cornish pixies are not a problem for him to get put up back in the cage. He lets them out. He tries a spell, page 102, Pescapipski Pesternomi, and he can't get them put away. And so Harry and Ron say on page 103, "Ron, can you believe him?" Hermione, he just wants to give us some hands-on experience." "Hands-on," said Harry. "Hermione, he didn't have a clue what he was doing." Hermione, "You've read his books. Look at all those amazing things he's done." "He says he's done,"